Hello and welcome to my channel. This is, I believe, Turnbull's Threads, if I'm not mistaken. I don't remember, and I probably will never remember this. But I am back after not having filmed for at least a month. So, today we're going over what I knit in September and October, because yeah. October was very busy. September was fairly busy. So I didn't have time to do this. So I'm going to talk about what I've been crafting over these 2 months and I guess update everybody on some things. I guess, tell you why I was so busy. So yeah, if you're interested in listening to me ramble for probably an hour, if not longer, feel free to stick around. You'll get to see a bunch of knits. If you're not interested, feel free to leave. Okay, so starting out, we'll start with some of the things that I have finished, and then we'll go into my large pile of things that I have worked on in these last 2 months. There are more works in progress floating around my apartment, but these are the things that I have actually touched and worked on these last 2 months. And then we're going to actually talk a little bit about acquisitions. I don't usually talk about the things that I've bought because they're not always that special, but this time I actually have some pretty special things that I've bought this month, these last 2 months, and I want to share them. So let's get started. So the first thing that I finished was this little thing. So this was another one of the patterns from the national parks, the White Sands National Park one actually. And it had this really neat ridge thing that was going on, which is why I wanted to knit it. It actually makes the fabric pretty stiff. So I used Hobby Lobby's low pill yarn for this. So it's acrylic, but the actual pattern makes the hat fairly stiff. I don't know if washing it will make it a little bit more flowy, drapey, but it's fairly stiff right now. And I did modify it just a little bit because I wasn't going to add the green pom-pom on top. And they're like, if you're not going to add the green pom-pom, just knit the last thing. And looking at it, I was like, but it's going to ruin the pattern. Like, how it, like, because then you would just end up with like this brown ridge and then straight flat. And I didn't want that. So I did add another quick ridge up here at the top. It's really soft. I do like how soft it is. I like the ridge. Ah! I do like the ridge. I might figure out something that I want to knit, like make my own design kind of thing, and incorporate it. Probably not in this fashion, like not all over ridge, but it could be a really neat accent, like blouses where they're fairly smooth here and then they have an accent right under the bust. Doing a ridge around there would be kind of neat or cute. You might be able to do it, like do a double row on some like edging, so like around the sleeve cuffs or around bottom of a sweater. That would be kind of cute. Ideas. So yeah, me with the hat. It's kind of big, and I have a big sticky thing in my hair right now. So me and hat, I'm not going to try on the rest of my hat, the other hat that I have. But yeah, first finished object. Enjoyed it. Fun knit. Took a little bit longer than I thought because of how you make the ridges. It requires some extra stitching. Used a bit of yarn on it too. So first one. That brings me to my second one. So my second one is this this pretty beauty. So I did my first test knit. So this is my first test knit. Yeah, I decided it is an accessory, so I went small, but yeah, I decided to try a technique that I have never done. And a fairly complicated pattern for my first test knit. Yay! I am so smart. But I test knit the StripesNBridges Hat by Anna. I'm not sure how to say her last name. Plowskis? I'll actually write it out. That way you actually know who it is. Anyways, I test knit her StripesNBridges hat. I did the beret version. She has a small, a large, a child, and the beret version in it. And it is brioche knitting. And I had never done any brioche knitting previous to this. In addition to brioche knitting, there's crossovers. You're doing a bunch of crossovers in brioche. So not only did I do a technique that I've never done, but yeah, we decided to do advanced technique in something that I'd never done. So I ended up using Zen Gardens yarn for this. I had some superwash merino in my stash, and looking at the pattern, you needed a light and a dark color, and I was looking through trying to find a color combination that I really liked, and I found those two. So they are both variegated. If you can't tell the brim, you can see there's some like bluey greens in that. So that one's my Mystic Ocean from Zen Garden. And then the lighter color has variation as well. It goes from like a really bright Caribbean blue to like more of a sea green. So there are some instances where like this greeny color in the dark color is right beside the greeny color in the light color. But you can still really see like the definition of this pattern. It's a very gorgeous pattern, I will say that. So yeah, so the brim, no problems. That was fine. The brioche, so yes, first time doing brioche. I decided to do brioche when I'm going on a trip and I don't have internet access at the very beginning of it because I was on a plane. So we start doing the brioche, like looking at the instructions and trying to copy what they're saying. Did it wrong. Didn't know I was doing it wrong. Then we get on the plane and my needles came out. And when my needles came out, because of how anyone who does brioche should understand my pain. Because you have yarn overs and you have like the other two stitches, and there was no way that I was going to be able to figure out how to put that back on the needles properly. So I had to rip back. So I had basically, like, if you look at the side pattern, I had finished almost to there. Doing it wrong, keep in mind, it was wrong, but I had finished to there. And I had to rip back to the brim because my needles came out. So I did that and started doing the brioche again. Once again, don't know what I'm doing. So I get about an inch and I'm looking at it and going, that just, it doesn't look right. There's something wrong. I'm doing something wrong with this brioche knitting. So I'm thinking about it and like, okay, I think my yarn over is like showing it in the front of the fabric instead of staying in the back of the fabric. And so it's like that definition, you didn't actually see stripes, you were seeing like lines across it. And I was like, okay, maybe if I try doing something a little bit different with my needle movements, I can, when I'm doing my yarn overs and knitting my stitches, I can get it to look right. So I changed it, did like 5 stitches and went, yep, I did it wrong. I need to do it a different way. So guess what I got to do again? Yeah, I had to rip right back to the brim to redo all of the brioche knitting that I had done to that point. yeah, new techniques. I enjoyed it, but yes, slightly frustrated with that. However, like once we got to this area, so the person who wrote this pattern, the designer, in the pattern she includes both written instructions and then she gives links to her website, which has like Instagram videos of how to do the different stitches, and that was so helpful. Like that's how I got this. That's how I finished the pattern. So there's like left and right crosses, which are slightly different in each, and like decreasing in brioche is included in this pattern. So she goes through like how you go about doing all of those techniques with brioche. And the patterns in the videos were extremely helpful. So if you like the hat, if you like the beret, I would suggest going and getting it. It's on Ravelry now. I will put the link in the description, so you can go find it. Yeah, I enjoyed it after some slight frustration at the beginning. Highly recommend it. The pattern was pretty clear. Obviously the videos and the instructions on how to do the different techniques were really, really helpful. And it's a gorgeous pattern. I really like how the beret turned out. Other things to talk about with this one. I don't think I have anything else to say about it. Enjoyed it. Go do it. Oh, yes. People who want to do this. So, if you're like me and you've never done brioche and you don't ever want to rip back, this is not the pattern for you. Like, learn how to do brioche and then try this. If you're an adventurous beginner, you can probably manage it. Pay attention to what the pictures look like. And also make sure that you have internet so you can look on the internet for how to do these things, because that will help you greatly. But if you've done brioche before and you haven't necessarily done the techniques, like the more advanced crossovers, but you know brioche and how to do brioche, this is a great pattern for learning how to do those crossover techniques. And you get a really lovely hat at the end of it. So, that was my StripesNBridges beret. And I only have one other finished item to show you today. Because although I've done a bunch of knitting, I haven't completed a bunch of things. So, the last thing that I completed were these pair of socks. So these socks are from this book. It's pattern number 1 on the 52 weeks of socks. Let me check and see what the actual name is. So it's Intersections by Marceline Smith. And these are toe up socks. So you start at the toe and you knit to the cuff. And I knit it in, Platinum Sparkle in the Alpaca sock from Platinum Sparkle by Wool Market Fibers, which is a small boutique shop in Gulfport, Mississippi. The owner obviously sells other types of yarns, but the husband, I believe, does a bunch of dyeing on a bunch of different sock bases. And this was a new sock base that they had. It's 70% superwash fine Highland alpaca and 30% nylon, so it's actually machine washable and dryable. So we're gonna see how that works out. But it's really soft yarn. I really enjoyed working with it. Like even now, like it's really silky. It is fuzzy like alpaca. And yeah, I really enjoyed working with this particular sock yarn. So this pattern is a toe up, so you cast on and then you knit, obviously toe up. I'm not entirely sure what type of heel it was. I think it was it's like a wrap and turn. It doesn't say in the pattern what type of heel it is. They're just like, start the heel. It's like, okay, I'll start the heel. Set up for the heel, start the heel. Okay, can do that. So I'm not exactly sure like what exact type of heel it is, but it was an easy heel to do. It wasn't one that I'd done before. I've done an afterthought heel before, like 2 different types of afterthought heels, and then a short row heel. And it wasn't exactly the same as any of them. So I'm not entirely sure what type of heel it is. Maybe someone who knows can leave me a comment, leave me like the actual thing that I did in the comments below, so that maybe I can learn a couple things. This, you have this really nice cable pattern on the top that then goes around the leg. It's a pretty simple cable pattern. I really enjoyed it. The yarn is super soft. It is a little bit splitty. So, like the other alpaca that I've worked with, alpaca tends to be a little bit more splitty than wool is. So I did have to be a little bit careful as I was knitting because I was using some pretty sharp needles, and like actually getting the whole strand of yarn instead of just like half of it as I was sticking my needle in, because you're cabling, so you're crossing over strands fairly frequently. And yeah, I think that's all I have to say about the pattern. The yarn is obviously gorgeous. I really liked I wanted some little bit more neutral colors for socks. Because as you will see, I'm going to go a little bit more colorful with some of my other ones. This, like it's super neutral, but there are these gorgeous little like dots of color. So you can see there's some red, give me a second. I'm going to change my camera around just a titch so that I can actually see what I'm showing you. So, give me a second. And I'm back. Okay, now I can actually see what I am doing. So, yeah. If it will focus on my sock, maybe. It's not wanting to focus properly. Yay. Okay, so like over here, there's a little bit of red. Let me see. You get some darker splotches here. Occasionally you'll get a little blue patch, blue sparkle. It just really wants to focus way back where I am, doesn't it? Oh well. I guess you'll have to trust me and what I say. But there is blue and red and a little bit of orange, little speckles in it. So it looked like it was fun to work with, because occasionally you'd be like, oh looky, there's like this little pop of color. And then you can see them on the finished sock. So they don't like overwhelm or anything, but it is a little pop here and there. So these were my latest finished project. And yeah, that's all of my finished objects that I have for the last 2 months. Yep. That's all I got for that. On the other hand, I have all kinds of works in progress. So two of these works in progress. Like all of the pieces are finished. It's just the like, I need to finish sewing them up kind of thing. So continuing on, we're gonna go through our works in progress. And I guess I'll go from most finished to least finished. Well, most finished to things on the needle, essentially. So my most finished object is this one. So this is my Panopeia. I'm saying that right. Yeah, Panopeia by Expression Fiber Arts. So this pattern is by Chandi Aggie from Expression Fiber Arts. She obviously is writing it for some of the yarn that she dyes, but I had some yarn in the correct weight, and like I saw the picture and was like, ooh, I think I have yarn that will work for this. And I did. I had exactly 2 skeins of the Malabrigo Mechita in Cello. And I was like, that should be just enough to make it, because she uses 2 skeins of what she uses, or of her yarn to make hers. I was this much off in terms of my estimation. I was playing yarn chicken like no other with this. So I did end up having to do a couple of alterations to my pattern. So I have a couple of less repeats up top in the yoke area. Not that I didn't want that, because I typically do want, like, I want my armholes to be smaller, and those are going to make the armholes a little bit bigger and a little bit more down there. I like mine a little bit higher. So it wasn't too bad about that, but it did mean that I had to use, so I had another hank of some Mechita yarn from Malabrigo, just not in Diana, or not in Cello, it was in Diana, that I used for a different project, and I had a lot of it left over. So basically I eked out as much as possible as I could out of my 2 Cello cakes, and then literally the last row, like the last row in bind off, is in Diana on both sides, so the front and the back. So it's like it looks great, and because I'm using so little Diana in terms of like the actual pieces, it's not that noticeable. But yeah, yarn chicken like no other. So I have knit both front and back pieces. I have gotten the shoulders together with a 3 needle bind off, and now I'm seaming up the sides. With this, I did end up caking up both of the skeins that I had, and I looked at them and went, I'm gonna have to alternate, because one had more reddish overtones and one had more bluish overtones, and it was very visible in the caked yarn. So it's like, yeah, if I do the front in one and the back in the other, they're not going to look quite right together. So we alternated between the 2, and let's see if I can do this without disturbing too much, because I do have it inside out right now because I'm working on a side seam. Right there. See, side seam. I've gotten all but that hole done. Yeah. So I have a bit more left to do on it, but let's hold up. So this is the front or back? I don't know. One of the 2. And this is the other side. And you can see it has some really pretty like purple, red, and blue colors on that white base. I did end up noticing that These particular skeins appeared to have been not as well saturated or dyed in the middle. So it did end up, like, it works. It's fine, but you do end up seeing that change. Like, maybe if I pull out, pull on this side. So you can see is where I'm seaming it together, light and dark at the bottom. So this was the middle, this was the beginning of it. And then when you look at the top, this was the end, this was the middle. So there is some slight color variations that are going on with this. But I think it's fine. It's fine. There's nothing I can do about it at this point in time. Because I'm not gonna rip it out and redo it. That's not happening. So I have to finish seaming it together so that I can, yeah, finally wear it. Like, finish blocking it out, re-blocking it. So I did block these pieces. So I blocked the pieces, and then it tells you to do the 3 needle bind off, seam it, and then I gotta block it again. So there is that. But it's really pretty. I like the pattern. The lace is really nice looking. Pattern is very clear, even if you don't listen to it a little bit. And yeah, I really like the colors. The colors are pretty gorgeous. We will see about what it looks like when I finish. But yeah, I did actually manage to use up 2 of my stash yarn skeins. I do like the yarn, the Mechita yarn. It is, though, because it is just like, it's, how do they describe it? Now they don't tell you anything. They call it fingering. Fingering weight single ply superwash yarn. So it's single ply, which means that you, like, when I've been sewing it up or when I was doing some of the, like, weaving in of ends, the yarn can lose its ply. So the twist that's in it, it can untwist because it is single ply, right? So you don't have 2 strands kind of working against each other, it's just one. So it can untwist. It is a little bit easier to rip in terms of when I was working with it with needles. Your needle will easily go through it, and if your needle goes through the yarn, it can, like, cause the yarn to rip and break. So I do have a couple, like, I have one hole that I ended up with where basically the yarn it disappeared. It disappeared, and when it disappeared, I was like, yeah, I definitely need to reinforce that. So I ended up using some thread, like white thread, to go through and basically follow the knitting pattern and sew it up. So it is something that I'm going to have to be a little bit careful with, but it's really gorgeous. It's really soft. It obviously has a very nice drape. Yeah, look forward to seeing it finished. Maybe next time I can give you a finished tank top just as we go into winter. But it is what it is. So that's my most finished work in progress. My second most finished work in progress is the Trellis Shell by Lori Gonyi. So this is part of my Decades Knitting project where I'm basically knitting patterns from different decades into the past. This was the 2000s? Yeah, this is the 2000 pattern. So we are almost in the 90s. But I knit the front and the back. So I have both. They're kind of big, so I don't know. Yeah. It's a bit bigger than I expected, so I did it according to her pattern. Like, I did it actually to a smaller size than her pattern necessarily called for, but maybe I just knit a little bit looser. I also don't typically do a gauge swatch because I'm bad. I should. I don't. That's basically how it goes. I don't unless I'm like coming up with my own, and then I'm like, I'm doing math. I should probably know about what gauge I'm hitting with this. But I think when I measured it, I wasn't too far off from what her gauge said, but when I blocked it, it got a little bit bigger. So it is silk that I'm using for it, so that might be part of it. But yeah, it does have a really nice drape now that it has been blocked. You can still see the pattern in the front piece. I like the color. I think the only thing that might be a problem with this is potentially the size. We shall see. Granted, when you look at it, it's definitely belted, so it's not like it's supposed to be form-fitting or anything. We'll just see if it's a little bit too big. But yeah, it's almost done. I'm happy. So that is the trellis. I've had at least one of those pieces knit for quite a while now. It was just getting the next piece finished. So my next work in progress is a more recent work in progress. I don't actually remember what the pattern name is and who did it. So it was in the Maker's magazine, which has a bunch of like knitting, sewing, they have some leather work, a bunch of different making kind of things. And the simple one. But I don't remember the pattern name. Mostly because I didn't write it down, I just looked at it. Oh well, it will get written down here so that you know exactly what pattern I am using. And then obviously any of these patterns that I can find links for, I will link to. Not all of them. I don't know if all of them have like online patterns, because some of them I'm getting from books, some of them I'm getting from old magazines, but I will at least like let you know where it's from, and obviously the name of the pattern and the designer. So if I can't find it, hopefully you can figure out where it came from. Anyways, so I got some Vitellana yarn in hydrangea, and it's 48% merino wool, 20% baby alpaca, and 32% organic Pima cotton, and a DK weight. And this deals with some of the things that I've been up to in the last month. So I had a work conference where I was actually presenting my research. So I had 15 minutes to talk about what I do in front of everybody, which was fun. It was fun. I really enjoyed it. It was very challenging, like going up to it, because what I said in 15 minutes was kind of a compilation of research that I have been doing for 2 years, right? So 2 years and 15 minutes. So definitely things got left out. I had to give people background so that they know what I'm talking about. And then like enough time to talk a little bit about like why this is important, why we're doing this. Yeah, because if you didn't know, I am working on my PhD. So I do research. That's currently my job. And this is one of the things that scientists do. They go places and they tell other scientists about all the cool things they're doing so that other scientists, A, know what things are out there, B, can like form other like collaborations or find people who have expertise in areas that aren't like them, and then like work together, right? Because you get really entrenched in like, you know what you're doing and you know what you're doing really, really well. But you can sometimes lose sight of some of the other interesting questions and things that can be done with what you're doing. And because you can lose sight of that, that's why you start having conferences, right? You have conferences so that people can kind of tell their ideas. Other people can be like, have you considered doing this? Like, what? Like, asking follow-up questions, like, have you considered going down this path? Would you like to work with me in doing this particular thing? Or, like, your research would be stronger if you did it this way or that way. So, I was presenting as a student, yay, on that first day, and I had 15 minutes and I did it, and I was so happy when I was done, because that meant that like the rest of the conference I could just be there. Like, I didn't have to worry about speaking in front of everybody again or getting ready for my presentation, making sure my PowerPoint was up and ready and perfect. It was done. There was nothing else I could do about it. So yeah, third speech of the first day and I was done. And so as soon as I was done, I was like, okay, I need something to keep me awake as I listen to all of these other people talking, and something productive to do. So I brought knitting along because it's awesome and I can pay attention and still do things. So brought my knitting along, cast on not exactly directly after, not like the directly next speech after, but probably the second speech after mine, I cast on to this particular project. And I got a good way through. By the end of the conference, I finished up the yoke. And then I went on vacation for a week. And on my vacation, I finished up the body. Also finished my socks. And then since then, I haven't touched it because of another work in progress that will be up next. But I do have the body completed, and now it's just putting the sleeve stitches back on and picking up on the body to do my sleeves. So yeah, so this is my pullover so far. I really like the design. I think it's going to be really cute. They'll end up with like 3/4 length kind of bell-like sleeves with it. So yeah, I really enjoyed this particular knitting project so far. We'll see how the sleeves go. Talking about the yarn, it's a little bit rough. So as I was working on it, I noticed that like I could only go so long before my fingers started to hurt. So I think actually the cotton in this particular blend, even though it says it's Pima cotton, it's rough enough that I am having problems as I'm knitting it. So I can do a bit of this, and then I have to take a break in order to let my fingers kind of relax and not burn a little bit. So I will say that I did like the color. The color is really pretty. It's hydrangea, so it's a like blue, but it's not a saturated blue, so they have like little white bits that kind of show up through it. And it's not a plied yarn, I think it's a chain yarn if I recall correctly. Yeah. So it's a chain yarn instead of being like spun and plied yarn. So that's, which might be part of the reason why I'm having problems with it, like knitting with it for a very long time. But it does create like a really nice fabric and a really nice kind of feeling of the fabric. So I am looking forward to finishing this up, hopefully this month. We shall see. It will depend on my other project, which I am going to be finishing that within the next week because I have to finish it within the next week. So once that one is off, I'm going to go ahead and basically do my sleeves 2 at a time because I know myself as evidenced by my multiple works in progress throughout my house, if I don't do them both at the same time, I'll finish one and then put off the other one until forever and not finish it. So if I do them two at a time, A, they're both the same length, so that is helpful. And B, they both get finished, and I don't have a work in progress that just kind of floats there because I finished one and I'm like, do I really want to finish the other one? I mean, I do, but yeah. So I know this about myself, so I've made it a conscious effort to basically always, if I have something that has to be in pairs, it's pretty much knit two at a time, because otherwise one will get done and the other one won't. Yeah. So this, my pullover that I don't remember the exact name of, but I really like. I like the detail on the raglan's increases. I like the little detail that they have at the bottom of it, and I think the sleeves will look really good once I finish them. So that is work in progress number 2. I think I'm going to randomly throw in a work in progress that isn't knitting here real fast, because it's probably the one that's most finished. Not most finished, but it's been worked on, and it's right here, and it doesn't involve a bunch of other stuff. So yes, I'm going to do a brief interlude. Not knitting, cross stitch. So I think I showed before this cross stitch. So I've actually finished the bottom. You can't see it because it's scrolled up. But I have started the words for the top part. So I am over halfway done with this particular cross stitch pattern, which makes me super happy. But it also means that I need to work on it because, yeah, I've been away. I was not within the state for roughly 2 weeks. And then the week before that, I was sick. And then last week, I had a presentation that I had to complete for my school. So that was kind of my main focus. I did just that. Yeah, and then September I was in and out because I did travel a bit in September. Yeah, been traveling. Which is made that, like this, which doesn't travel very well because it's in a scroll frame and so it takes up a bunch of room. So you can't get it through the airport very easily. Has been not worked on quite as quickly. But yeah, I'm really happy with it. I am close to being done. As soon as I am done with this one, I do need to start another one because my brother is getting married in April. And since he is getting married in April, I'm doing a cross stitch pattern for him and his bride, like I've done for pretty much all of my cousins' siblings who've been married. They all get a cross stitch with like the last name and then the actual date with a Mr. and Mrs. on it, and it's a really pretty pattern. It takes a little while. The actual cross stitch doesn't take as long, but I do backstitch everything just because otherwise the pattern doesn't really stand out as much. And backstitching everything takes forever. I love the definition backstitch does. It's gorgeous and it really can make all of your details pop. But it takes so much time. And similar to like that yarn that I was working on where my fingers start to hurt, my finger can start to hurt after doing a bunch of cross stitch just with a small needle. Probably in part because I don't use a thimble. I did get one, and I have a leather one somewhere in my apartment. I was using it, and it did help. It helps a lot because just it's pretty much like the pushing the needle through the fat or through the cloth takes some push, and if you don't have a thimble on, it will tear up your fingers. But yeah, happy with this, making progress. I would like to get it done by Christmas. We'll see if that actually happens. Hi again. I'm not exactly sure where my camera died. Obviously I'm talking a lot in this one. So I'm gonna go ahead and start with what project I was going on when I heard the loud beep and the camera died. So I started another test knit, the Translation Shawl by Helen Kennedy Designs. It's should be coming out soon because the test knit is supposed to be finishing up next week, actually. And I am pretty close to being done. So let's bring it up and kind of show it off. So this is a crescent shawl, and it does have a lace pattern to it. There is some color shifting in this particular pattern. I'm using 3 different yarns. The first, well, technically 4 yarns. So I am using like a really thin stranded cashmere lace yarn kind of as a background to kind of make sure that my silk lace, because it is a single ply, it's not double plied or anything, that it behaves properly. And I've liked how the fabric turned out a little bit better. I've done just the lace before, and although I really like that particular pattern and shawl, I did want to have something that had a little bit more, I guess, oomph to it. So there is this that's kind of in the background, but you can't really tell in the final knitted product. I mean, if you look really close, you can, but it's nicely fading into the entire thing. So the first yarn that I used is this top one. It's a Mermaid at the Sea. Yeah, Mermaid at the Sea by Darn Good Yarn, and their lace weight. I used up my entire skein of it, which meant that I had to color shift a little bit earlier than called for in the pattern, but it works out pretty well. Then we went into French Lavender, which is where you start seeing the purple show up with the green, and then the final color that we end up with, which we've just started getting into the entire, where the both strands are that color, is in Tidal Pool. So I am almost done. I have 4 more rows before I'm on my finishing rows. And yeah, I don't know how big it is yet. It's feeling kind of weighty, so it's probably a decent size, and then it will get blocked out. So it'll be a little bit longer, that way it'll show off that lace pattern a lot better. But I have to say I really like how she goes, the color shifting. The lace pattern is a good, interesting pattern. It's not super easy to memorize as you're going about it, because it's what, 8 pattern, or 8 row essential, well, 16 row repeat, but every other row is the same, or about the same. So that's not a hard one to remember, but the actual lace row is not as intuitive sometimes. So I have to pay a little bit closer attention, which means that because I've been watching things as I've been doing it, there have been a couple of instances where I got to the very end and was like, wait a second. I didn't finish this repeat, and I know that the row has to have the proper number. So I messed up somewhere, and then you rip out 100, 200 stitches because you messed up at the beginning of the row, and so it's off the entire row. Yeah, not entirely mindless knitting, so probably not something to take to knit at knitting circles. Audiobooks have been fine doing it because you can actually pay attention, but like trying to watch TV or YouTube at the same time, not my best idea. But I am almost done. And if you want to see like what the yarn looks like, so I don't obviously have any more of Mermaid at the Sea. It's all in this. But I did have a little bit of the French lavender left. Oh, come on, focus. Focus. There we go. So you can see it's that purple and green colors together. And obviously I still have Tidal Pool because I am still working on it. And this is what the Tidal Pool colorway looks like. About there. Yeah, so you can see it's still got that like purple behind it, but with some really pretty like blue highlights in there. So I am almost done with this test knit. I get to learn a new technique at the end as well, so go me. And then that brings a quick thing. I got some yarn stoppers finally, so I got some little kitties that I'm using currently on this guy. Come on. Yeah. There we go. See the cute little kitty? Yeah, I'm really happy. These are kind of not my first yarn stoppers, but I left all of my yarn stoppers here when I went on my trip. So, and they were very boring yarn stoppers, like the little triangles. And I only had 2 of them, so I have needed to get more. Because as you have seen, I have more than 2 projects on my needles pretty much all the time. So I did get finally a pair of yarn stoppers. Something I need to invest more in. What can we say? Things I need to do and haven't done. My other works in progress, I have 3 more things to show. We'll try and go through these a little bit faster. So I started my pattern for the 90s. It's going to be another shawl. It's called as you can see, I tend to print off my patterns. That way I can find them and write on them. Twilight Lace by Laura Wallins. And the pattern's from the 1990s. So, a little bit older. Another lace pattern, it involved a provisional cast on and then this new kind of lace stitch, which kind of gives you the little starburst effects in the pattern. So it should look really good once it gets bigger, using pretty large needles actually for lace weight yarn. Yeah, I started it, haven't really worked on it since because I had that test knit that I need to finish. So, yep. Another project in the works. We'll finish sometime. Then the second project that I've been working on has been an original design. Yeah, so I've had an idea, started working on the idea, got 2 or 3 rows, well, I've only done 2 or 3 rows this time, cast on a bunch of stitches. so many stitches. I think I had like 400 stitches that I cast on, and have been decreasing ever since. But yeah, pretty good. It uses darn good yarn in the colorway Twisted Jungle and the Creme cotton in like a silver gray kind of color. And I do some slip stitching, and I really like how it's turning out so far. And then the final project that I worked on in these last 2 months is something that I picked up actually a couple years ago. So I bought this particular thing, and if you don't know what this is, you haven't been watching a ton of knitting podcasts, because pretty much everyone that I've been watching has been having one of these. So yes, I have a drop spindle. I picked it up a couple of years ago, didn't do much with it, finally picked it up again, and started spinning again, or at least trying to spin. I have a little bit here, as you can see. A little bit has been done, and apparently I do it really, really fine. So we shall see how good of a yarn it is. It definitely is not totally consistent. I haven't gotten that good yet at it, and as you can see, I haven't actually spun that much, but I ran out of the amount that I had pulled out, so I need to finish pulling out more amount and continue to spin on this. Yeah, it's fun. Not as fun as knitting, but I have enjoyed it. Probably do more of this. Okay, so that gets me through all of my works in progress. So I'm going to discuss a little bit about some acquisitions that I got, and this has mostly been the last 3 weeks. Yeah, 3 weeks. So a number of things happened. I mentioned a little bit earlier that I had a conference and then I went on vacation. So when I went on vacation, I went up to areas that are slightly colder than Louisiana. Shock. There are places like that. So I went to Michigan and over to Sarnia, Canada. And because both of those places are slightly colder than here, they tend to have a better yarn selection, let's say. So while I was up there, I did want to basically get a souvenir yarn, because I have this book, right? I have 52 weeks of socks, and I don't have 52 weeks worth of different sock yarns. So as I went places, I wanted to get basically a kind of sock yarn. That way I could do socks from my sock book. So that is what I did. I basically went to 2 different places. I ended up getting 3 skeins of yarn, but that's because one of them was kind of neat. So first off, I was in Michigan visiting some of my cousins and had to go up to Lansing. So we went to this really cute yarn shop up in Lansing where they had, I don't remember the name now. I will have to look that up again, because there were 2 shops that we were looking at and I don't remember which one we went to. But it's near Michigan State University. Real close to Michigan State University. And we went to the yarn shop, and it was a really big yarn shop. Like, there was so much yarn in there, and lots of it was gorgeous. All kinds of different weights, all kinds of different, like, materials. Loved it. But while I was there, I specifically wanted things that had been done in Michigan, right? I didn't want necessarily, although I do like the larger manufacturers' yarns, I wanted something that had been dyed in Michigan. So that leads me to the 2 colors that I have here. So the first color I have is Soul Blue Jean Baby, and it is from Why Not Fibers, which is a yarn shop and place that dyes yarn basically in Traverse City, Michigan. So it was hand dyed in northern Michigan, and it's a really nice kind of solid blue. So it'll make for a really nice pair of socks. I'm looking forward to knitting this one up. So I think most of the socks that I've knit so far have been with somewhat variegated socks. Either they were self-striping or you saw my platinum socks where there's like speckles and things. So these will be a solid color paired socks. And it's a really pretty blue color, and I like the blue color. The other yarn that I actually got at that yarn shop was this one, which is a super deep green color, and it's called Into the Woods. And yeah, I don't know how true to color it is. Like, you can get a hint of the green, but it's super, super dark. And this is actually an exclusive, oh, there it is. I found the yarn shop name. It's Woven Art Yarn Shop. So this particular colorway is exclusive to the Woven Art Yarn Shop, and I was like, so yeah, there's one that it's not necessarily locally dyed, but it is exclusive to that particular yarn shop, and I really did like the color. It's a gorgeous green, like forest green but deeper. So those were the two yarns that I got in Michigan. So I have 2 yarns for 2 pairs of socks. Once I'd finished up in Michigan, I then traveled to Sarnia, Canada, and got to Sarnia, Canada, spent some time with my family, and then the last day I was like, oh yeah, that was right, I wanted to get some yarn while I was here. I really wasn't there that long. I drove there Wednesday, and we drove back to Michigan on Friday afternoon. So, short time period. But I was planning on going to a yarn shop called Heaven is Handmade there. It's fairly close to where I was staying. Walked there, found out that someone was sick, and so they were closed. And I was like, oh no, I won't be able to get any yarn up here in Sarnia. But I had looked up yarn shops before, and there were 2. So the second one isn't exclusively a yarn shop. It's like a gift home kind of shop with some yarn in the back. And so it's like, well, we'll try that. It's not that far of a walk. We'll see if they have yarn. If they don't, I guess I won't have yarn from Canada. So I walked my little way over there, got to the yarn shop. It was like when you first go in there, well, to the gift shop. When I first go in, there's like no yarn anywhere to be seen. And then as you looking far in the back, it's like, oh, I see yarn, yay! The website wasn't lying. And then when I actually got back there, they did have a pretty good selection of yarn. Sadly, they didn't have any locally dyed yarn because they had recently had a fiber show in Sarnia, Canada, and so the shop owner was totally sold out of all of their local yarn. But while I was there, I was like, okay, I can't get one that was from a dyer in Canada, but I can get yarn from Canada. So I looked through their different things. I did get some cashmere yarn because they were trying to get rid of it. It was on sale. But the one that I ended up buying in the sock yarn side is this one. So it's from Lavender and Tidal, probably pronouncing that wrong. But so it is dyed in Paris and not Canada, but it's a really pretty like robin egg blue with some like gold umber streaks going through it. So, and it's on their cashmerino base, so 75% merino, cashmere, and nylon. The other 2 were I think they're all like a sock yarn base. Superwash Merino and Superwash Merino. Yeah, just merino yarn. This is got a little bit of cashmere, so it's super soft. I like the color. It was hidden behind some other skeins, so found it and was like, yep, that's the color I'm gonna take. So I now have 3 pairs of socks. And then we came home. And when I got back, had a very busy week this week, but one of the yarn shops, actually the one that did my alpaca yarn, the Wool Market Fibers, started following them on social media once I bought their yarn and saw that they were going to be at a kind of a market, like outdoor market, and it was supposed to be mostly yarn, wool kind of things. So I was like, okay, where is this? It was actually in Baton Rouge, so not that far away, fairly easy drive. It's like, okay, I can do this. So I did. I went out there on Saturday. I've traveled so much over the last 3 weeks. It's crazy. So traveled out there. It was very small. They had like 10 vendors at this particular one because it's Louisiana. And even then, like, all 10 of them aren't necessarily from Louisiana. There was a couple of people who were, like, from Gulfport. There were some from Baton Rouge, New Orleans. Very small. But I did want to support all of the local dyers, right? Because there aren't a ton of them. There aren't a ton of people who knit around here. There's very few yarn shops. So it's like, I really want that. And especially since I'm probably going to be leaving the state. More about that in the future. You'll find out about that once I have more concrete details. But because I was likely to be moving from the state, I wanted to get some locally dyed yarn while I'm here. So I did buy a skein of yarn from everybody who was there, who did their own dyeing. So I'm going to show you those, and you can see how beautiful the yarn is that people are dyeing around here. So the first one that I have here is by Whimsy Stitches Yarn Company, and this is down in New Orleans. They hand dye it, and I got their standard sock, a 4-ply fingering, 75% merino, 25% nylon, regular sock base. And I got the Cauldron Soup colorway because I really, really, really like how the greens turned out, right? So you have some bright greens and then you have a bunch of dark greens. I think technically it was like a black and a green that got dyes for what got mixed together, but you ended up more with like a dark green. So I really like that one. I now have a couple of greens and I have a couple of blues. So the next colorway that I got, so the Wool Market Fibers that I'd gotten the alpaca from was there again. So I was like, I really like the alpaca. So I wanted to get another sock yarn from them. I didn't see any of their alpaca base, but as I was feeling all of their different bases, they have a soft sock base that's same composition as most sock yarns, but they also had it in this really pretty colorway, which I couldn't find a name for it on any of the 3 skeins that they had there, and it's another blue, so it's a pretty dark blue, but it has these really nice pops of light blue going through it. And when I was talking with the dyer, he was saying that although he doesn't knit or crochet, the that he knows that has done some patterns from this. She did actually a shawl, and what she did was she would knit all of the dark blue, but then purl the light blue so that it would really like pop out, right? So that stitch definition. And it like really created a really nice pop of color. So what I want to do with this is, so I have a bunch of like complicated sock patterns, and I don't want to use this particular skein for that. I want to either see if I have a basic sock pattern that's basically all stockinette stitch, or cobble my own sock pattern together. And what I want to do is on the leg and the upper foot, not the sole of the sock, but the leg and the upper foot, whenever that light blue comes up, go ahead and purl it like she did with the shawl, and see if that will create like really nice pops of color in my socks. So I think that'll be really fun. And it's a super soft, it is a soft sock base. The next place that I will highlight is actually a yarn dyer who apparently lives in the same city I do that I did not know about. So she has cattails yarn, and she had a bunch of different colorways, a number of different bases. Like I said, I wanted a sock, so I got her Bombay sock base, but she had some really neat inspiration and names, and because one of her collections is from the Wheel of Time. I think she's basing it off of the Netflix series, but I've read some of the books and I really like the books. So I was like, as a book lover, I kind of need to get something from that particular series. So she had one called The Taint, and it's a really nice dark colorway. So like gray, but it's got like little, like some purple undertones, some green undertones, some blue undertones, some like mauve undertones. So it'll be a really interesting sock, very dark. Probably not best to do it with a ton of like stitch well, you might be able to do some stitch definition. I wouldn't necessarily go cabling, but it'll be like much more subtle because it'll be obviously harder to see on this guy. But I really like the color, and so I was like, take that one. While I was there, she also had a number of hanks of mystery or clearance stuff. So either old stock or stuff that she'd thrown in a vat and forgot either what the base was or what she was dyeing with. So I was looking through those colors and I found this beautiful one. It's like probably like a dusty rose to like a light purple, like not lavender, but really muted purple tones, and really like the color, so I got it. I have no idea what it is. It feels like a fingering weight yarn, looks like a fingering weight yarn, but I probably will need to actually like do techniques that I haven't done before to determine exactly what type of weight this is. Obviously I have no idea what composition it is, and I'm not probably ever gonna figure that out. It feels like a wool, it's probably majority wool base, just based on all of the different yarns that she had. She didn't have a ton of acrylic or other things. It's probably mostly wool base, but I don't know if it's 100% wool or if it's like a sock yarn. Who knows? I will find something to do with it. If it's fingering weight, it's going into a pair of socks. If even if it's not fingering weight and it falls into the weight categories that I have in that book, it'll go into a pair of socks. If it's heavier, I'll find something to do with it. I just really like the color. So yeah, another one from her. Really enjoyed her colors. Obviously, come look at some of the stuff in Louisiana. Then we had Mitchell's Creations. So she's also Louisiana dyer. She had a bunch of different colorways. This one is the Funky Cold Patina, but I really liked it because it had some of the green and browns, so it kind of reminded me a little bit of both some of the Mardi Gras colors, right? So gold, yellow, purple, but also more like the swamp area around here. So it's pretty green around here, and the water tends to be like the bluey brown color half the time. So yeah, got this because of that. And then the final skein of yarn that I got yesterday is another sock base, because yes, I was looking for socks. And this is from Florida Stitch, which does their dyeing out in Baton Rouge, so they were local to the area. This one is in the colorway Creme, which is basically the grown-up Mardi Gras colors, right? So you can see they've got purple and green and gold in this colorway on like a cream base. But it's something that I would wear, right? Versus like those really vibrant colors, which you see all the time around here around Mardi Gras. But let's be real. Who's going to wear that every day? You will wear that for Mardi Gras, and like only for Mardi Gras. And I wanted something that like you could wear other times. Especially since I'm not like a huge fan of Mardi Gras. I do like king cake. I will say that. King cake is really good. And not the kind that you get in Walmart. Walmart, eh. But they have some really good bakeries around here with some really good king cake. But I wanted something to like be Louisiana before I left. So this will make a really nice pair of socks that will remind me of king cake. And Louisiana and all its glory. And that covers all of the yarn that I got while at the Fiber Festival. I did also get a set of like paints, so handmade paints, handmade watercolor paints. So we'll see how these turn out. It's just blue, yellow, red. So I can create the entire color palette from these paints. And it's handmade, so the person makes the colors themselves. We'll see. This is going to be something fun to play with. So most of the watercolors that I have done now, it's from like the really cheap palettes that you get at Michael's, essentially. Michael's. And I don't do a ton of color mixing, it's just pull the color out. So this is going to force me at some point to do a little bit more color theory, right? So mixing and matching paints, getting different shades, determining percentages for that. So yeah, pretty happy with that. And then the final thing that I have recently acquired that I'm going to mention because it's a sock yarn. I didn't get it anywhere special. It was an online purchase, but it was kind of a special sale, I guess. It showed up and they were like, hey, if you're interested in this, send us that you're interested and we'll sell you, obviously, them. So, small dyeing lot, Weird Sisters. They dye it in Washington. I got the color Maven, and I just like I really like the colorway, right? So it's got golds and red and purple. So figured I might as well let that know, because people who do hand dyeing, like, they get some really gorgeous colors, and figured might as well, like, let the one person who watches this know that these are out there. If you enjoyed my really long rambling, feel free to like or subscribe down below. If you have any advice or would like to make any comments, feel free to make them down below. Yeah. I've noticed that not a ton of people are watching these, so this is purely for me at this point. But if you manage to make it to the very, very end, I guess leave an emoji. Leave an emoji that will let me know how you're feeling by the end, because I am sure that you have been watching this forever, because I feel like I've been talking forever. And my camera did die in the middle. So, yeah, if you enjoyed it, feel free to like, subscribe, ... If you don't, please don't dislike it. Just skip it. I mean, if you didn't like it, I don't think you've made it this far. But, yeah. Other than that, hopefully I will be able to do this again in at the end of November. Unless, of course, I'm sick, or traveling, or life is overwhelming, considering I might be moving soon, so I need to start packing. Yeah. So, future plans, hopefully we'll have another one of these out in November. If not, maybe December. Might be early January by the time I get back. It is holiday season. If I don't get to see everybody before the holidays, Happy Thanksgiving, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. We'll say this again if I manage to do it again in November. Yeah, so that's all I have. I hope to see you again in the future. Bye.